Achilles, one of the most renowned heroes of Greek mythology, stands as a symbol of both greatness and tragic destiny. The son of Peleus, a mortal king, and Thetis, a sea nymph, Achilles is best known for his unmatched prowess in battle and his pivotal role in the Trojan War. His story is deeply intertwined with themes of heroism, honor, fate, and mortality, making him one of the most complex figures in classical mythology. Though he was a near-invincible warrior, Achilles' vulnerability, his infamous Achilles' heel, ultimately led to his downfall. Birth and early life. The half-god hero. Achilles was born into both divine and mortal realms, his mother Thetis being a goddess and his father Peleus a mortal. According to myth, when Achilles was born, his mother attempted to make him invulnerable. In one version of the story, Thetis dipped the infant Achilles into the sacred waters of the river Styx, which ran through the underworld. These waters were believed to grant invulnerability to those submerged in them. However, Thetis held Achilles by his heel, leaving that part of his body unprotected. This heel would later become the weak spot that ultimately caused his death and gave rise to the expression Achilles' heel. Thetis knew her son was destined for greatness but was also aware that his life would be short if he pursued glory in battle. She did everything she could to protect him, even hiding him on the island of Skyros, disguised as a girl, to keep him from being drawn into the Trojan War. Achilles and the Trojan War, the call to arms. The seeds of the Trojan War were sown when Paris, prince of Troy, abducted Helen, the queen of Sparta and wife of Menelaus. This event prompted Menelaus and his brother, Agamemnon, the king of Mycenae, to assemble a vast coalition of Greek forces to retrieve Helen and lay siege to Troy. However, it was foretold that the Greeks could not win the war without the presence of Achilles, the mightiest warrior of the age. Though Achilles was hiding on Skyros, dressed as a girl to avoid being taken to war, Odysseus, the cunning king of Ithaca, saw through the disguise. He tricked Achilles into revealing his true identity by laying out weapons among other items, knowing that Achilles' warrior nature would compel him to reach for the arms. Realizing his fate was unavoidable, Achilles joined the Greek forces, despite knowing that this decision would lead to his early death. Achilles and Patroclus, friendship and brotherhood. Achilles is often portrayed as a solitary figure, but his relationship with Patroclus, a companion, and possibly his lover, played a crucial role in his life and in the events of the Trojan War. The two were raised together from a young age, and their bond was one of deep friendship, loyalty, and affection. Patroclus' death would become the catalyst for Achilles' most defining moments in the war. The wrath of Achilles, quarrel with Agamemnon. The Trojan War had been raging for years when the conflict between Achilles and Agamemnon came to a head, an event that forms the central plot of Homer's Iliad. During one of the Greeks' raids, they captured two women, Chryses and Briseis, who were given as war prizes to Agamemnon and Achilles, respectively. However, Apollo, the god of prophecy and plague, struck the Greek camp with a plague after Agamemnon refused to return Chryses to her father, a priest of Apollo. To stop the devastation, Agamemnon was forced to give Chryses back but, in turn, demanded Briseis from Achilles as compensation. Furious at this insult, Achilles withdrew from the war, taking his soldiers, the Myrmidons, with him. Without Achilles, the Greeks suffered greatly, and the Trojans, led by Hector, son of King Priam, gained the upper hand. Achilles' absence from the battlefield demonstrated his immense importance to the Greek cause, and the war became a stalemate without him. The death of Patroclus, Achilles' rage unleashed. As the Greek forces struggled against the Trojans, Patroclus, eager to help his comrades, donned Achilles' armor and entered the battlefield in his place. Although he fought valiantly, Patroclus was no match for Hector, who mistook him for Achilles and killed him in a brutal duel. Hector stripped Achilles' armor from Patroclus' body, further dishonoring him and enraging Achilles. When news of Patroclus' death reached Achilles, he was overwhelmed with grief and guilt. Patroclus had been like a brother to him, and Achilles believed that his withdrawal from the battle had indirectly led to his friend's demise. Overcome with rage and sorrow, Achilles vowed to avenge Patroclus' death by killing Hector, even though he knew that doing so would seal his own fate. Achilles' decision to return to the battlefield marks a turning point in the war. His rage, known as the Wrath of Achilles, becomes a central theme of the Iliad. He no longer fights for glory or honor but out of a deeply personal need for vengeance. The duel between Achilles and Hector. The climactic moment of the Iliad is the duel between Achilles and Hector, the Trojan prince and Troy's greatest warrior. After Patroclus' death, Hector becomes Achilles' primary target, and the two meet in single combat outside the walls of Troy. In one of the most famous scenes in Greek literature, Achilles chases Hector around the walls of the city 3 times before finally confronting him. Though Hector bravely stands his ground, he is no match for the furious Achilles, who kills him swiftly. But Achilles' rage does not end with Hector's death. In a brutal display of vengeance, he ties Hector's body to his chariot and drags it around the walls of Troy, intending to deny Hector the honor of a proper burial. This act horrifies both the Trojans and the Greeks, as it violates the sacred customs regarding the treatment of the dead. Achilles and Priam, a moment of humanity. Achilles' desecration of Hector's body marks him as a tragic hero, consumed by rage and vengeance. However, the Iliad also presents a moment of redemption for Achilles when Priam, the elderly king of Troy and father of Hector, comes to Achilles' tent to beg for the return of his son's body. In one of the most moving scenes of the epic, Priam appeals to Achilles' sense of pity and humanity, asking him to remember his own father, Peleus. Achilles, deeply moved by Priam's words, is reminded of his mortality and the fleeting nature of life. He weeps for his own father and for Patroclus, and in a moment of profound empathy, he returns Hector's body to Priam for a proper burial. This scene highlights Achilles' dual nature. Though he is capable of great violence, he is also capable of deep emotion and understanding. The death of Achilles, the prophecy fulfilled. Though Achilles achieved his goal of avenging Patroclus, his own fate was sealed. Throughout the Iliad, Thetis repeatedly warns her son that if he continues to fight in the Trojan War, he will die young but will gain eternal glory. Achilles, ever driven by the pursuit of honor and renown, chooses this path knowingly. Achilles' death is not recounted in the Iliad but is described in later myths. According to legend, Achilles was killed by Paris, the Trojan prince who had started the war by abducting Helen. With the help of the god Apollo, Paris shot an arrow that struck Achilles in his only vulnerable spot, his heel. The blow proved fatal, and Achilles died on the battlefield, just as had been foretold. After his death, Achilles' armor became the subject of a bitter dispute between Ajax and Odysseus, 2 of the Greek warriors. Odysseus was ultimately awarded the armor, further deepening the tragedy surrounding Achilles' legacy. Achilles' legacy, the hero's immortality. Though Achilles met a tragic end, his legacy as the greatest of Greek heroes was immortalized in poetry, art, and literature. His name became synonymous with bravery, strength, and heroism, but also with the complexities of human nature. Achilles was not merely a warrior, he was a man who experienced intense emotions: anger, love, grief, and compassion, and whose choices were shaped by both his divine heritage and his mortal limitations. The story of Achilles has endured for millennia, in part because it explores timeless themes of honor, fate, mortality, and the pursuit of glory. Achilles' decision to embrace a short but glorious life rather than a long but obscure one speaks to the human desire for significance and the quest for meaning in a world governed by unpredictable forces. Achilles in later tradition. Achilles' story did not end with his death. In later Greek and Roman tradition, he became a figure of almost godlike status. In Virgil's Aeneid, which tells the story of Aeneas's escape from Troy and the founding of Rome, Achilles is remembered as a fearsome and nearly invincible warrior. In some versions of his myth, after his death, Achilles was taken to the Isle of the Blessed, where he was granted a form of immortality in the afterlife. Achilles also became a central figure in the medieval and Renaissance retellings of Greek myth. Homer's Iliad, with its focus on the human side of Achilles, continued to be studied and admired for its deep insights into the nature of heroism and the human condition. Achilles as a symbol of heroism and tragedy. The story of Achilles is a tale of greatness tempered by tragic destiny. As a warrior, he was unmatched, but his humanity is what makes him a lasting figure in myth. Achilles' choices, between a long life of obscurity or a short life filled with glory, continue to resonate with readers because they reflect universal questions about the nature of life, death, and what it means to be remembered.